very much for the invitation to speak here, obviously organised by Giles, and to talk in particular about purple fruits, and the title is Purple Fruits to Improve Brain Function. Now, is this the way of solving all brain problems? Of course not. But together with other approaches, this is a way of moderating, maybe even preventing some of the brain diseases. So I'm going to look firstly at something that you may think, firstly, he's completely off track. We're going to look at the gut bacteria. So what's the gut bacteria got to do with the brain, as the first question? And the purple compounds we'll talk about are called anthocyanins, that's the chemical name for it. These are the purple colours in things like plums, in mulberries. My mulberry tree is growing well at the moment. In all blueberries, even though they're blue, these are all anthocyanins. So what's the connection? Our work has been on a range of functional foods. Now, functional foods are defined as foods that provide nutrition but can also prevent or even reverse disease states. So those both effects, and that's the term functional foods. So we've looked at anthocyanins. We had a major review earlier this year on anthocyanins in chronic disease. The other thing we've looked at in particular is on the Australian tropical fruits. And these are a remarkably underutilised source of health-giving materials. And we'll talk about one of those in particular. So the bacteria in the gut, the microbiome, microbiota it'll be also called, is an amazing set of organisms. The estimate is there's something like 38 trillion bacteria in the gut. That's 38 followed by 12 zeros. It's a lot. The bacterial DNA is something like 100 times the human DNA. So in our gut, there's 100 times the DNA of the rest of the body. In fact, there's one concept that the human body is simply a remarkably well-controlled, temperature-controlled, nutrient-controlled bag to support the bacteria. We normally think the other way around, but it's a very good control mechanism. Well, what does the gut microbiome do? What's their main role? Well, on the slide there you'll see that they contribute to host defense and nutrition and development of the immune system. So some of the vitamins that we need in our body, vitamin K in particular, vitamin B, are actually made by the bacteria in the gut. The immune system development is really important as well, and that comes from cells that are in the gut wall. But also the bacteria provide the resistance or increase the integrity of the wall, and so prevent anything simply from going into the mouth and getting into the stomach. Some of those things will simply never get through, toxins in particular. And so this helps that resistance. And so these are really important functions. But that's things that are limited, next one, things that are limited to the gut. We're talking about the brain. First of all, does that make sense? Does it make sense that the bacteria in the gut will affect the brain? Well, of course it does. What happens when you're hungry? What happens, what does the body do? Signals go from the gut to the brain, eat something, muffins for example, and then solve that. So of course there's an interaction between the gut and the brain. But is it there to actually change function? Well, if it is, how's it going to do it? Well, there's the nervous system. So the vagus nerve is a major nerve from the brain that goes down to, or goes to the heart, it goes to a whole lot of organs, but in particular to the gut. So there's a bi-directional communication. So gut to the brain, brain to the gut, through this vagus nerve. Now everything that goes, the food that's absorbed in the body goes into the bloodstream. The blood the heart pumps it around the whole of the body, including the brain. So anything that gets through there will go to every living cell in the body, obviously including the brain. So that's another part. A further one is the immune system. So activation of the immune system to repel anything foreign that gets into the body will come from the gut and will be stimulated as well. So we've got these multiple ways of getting information from the gut bacteria to the brain. The next one. Now, these are two slides here which are a little bit complex, but the concept that down towards the bottom of the slide on the right-hand side, down the bottom, the change of that gut bacteria causing inflammation, so letting inflammatory markers into the bloodstream, and those inflammatory markers will go throughout the body and cause inflammation in the body. And that'll be in the liver and the heart, everywhere, but in the brain as well. And there's a lot of really good evidence that diseases of the brain follow inflammation. Even Alzheimer's disease we'll talk about later, but certainly schizophrenia we'll talk about as well, that there's a component in there of inflammation of the brain cells, and that inflammation can be worsened by changes in the gut, in the bacteria in the gut. But if we can worsen it, we can maybe also improve it. So by changing those 38 trillion bacteria and changing the products that they produce, can we also improve the inflammatory state? And yes, we can. On the slide on, no, not on the slide on the right-hand side there, schizophrenia has been always considered as a brain disease. So this is a neuropsychiatric disorder, and as if it's the brain that's doing it. So changes in the nerve transmitters within the brain, therefore changing the cognition, so the thinking processes, changing the emotions in the brain. Now that's a nice, convenient model, and there's been a lot of drugs, some of which work better than others, for schizophrenia. But it forgets one major issue. The brain has a blood circulation, and the blood circulation comes from the rest of the body. So why should it be simply isolated? And so that concept that, well, wait a minute, some of those neurotransmitters might come from the body. For example, serotonin, a major, or considered to be a major neurotransmitter in schizophrenia. Well, the biggest amount of serotonin in the body is in the wall of the gut. So the nerves that control the gut wall itself use serotonin. That's actually the biggest source in the body. So yes, some of that will go to the brain. So changes in those nerve transmitters in the body, changing what's in the brain. But in the last couple of years, there's been some really interesting work hinting that the drugs that we've been giving for schizophrenia have actually worsened the bacteria in the gut, and therefore made it harder to actually treat. So we've got a very complex situation there. That gut bacteria is its own ecosystem, and that ecosystem is very finely balanced and can be changed either way. Alzheimer's disease, again, considered to be mainly a brain disease. Yes, there is the degradation of neurons in the brain, the plaques forming, the loss of activity of the nerves, and that's fine. That's all, there's all good evidence, really good evidence for that. But again, the brain is part of the rest of the body. Do the things that circulate in the body have an effect on that? And there's now some really interesting information becoming available that the onset of Alzheimer's disease may start from an infection in the body that passes across into the brain. And even a minor infection, chronic low-grade infection, causing inflammation in the brain and damaging the nerve endings. Is that a major reason for Alzheimer's? We simply don't know. But it's certainly something that should be thought about, that should be looked at. So these concepts that inflammation in particular in the brain may be causing this range of brain diseases. That it was mentioned before that this group has supported autism, or people with autism. And certainly there is now some really good evidence that there is a marked influence of the bacteria in the gut on the onset of autism. Is it the only cause? Is it casual or is it causal? We don't know. Next one, please. But before we can really look at any of these, it's nice saying, hey, they could be involved, but we need some mechanisms. We need some molecular mechanism by which we can say this compound acts through that mechanism to cause these changes, and these changes are relevant. Otherwise it's simply, oh, it's a nice idea to talk about over a cup of coffee, for example, or a muffin. Wonderful concept, but we need some evidence that there are mechanisms there that can be activated. Now I've mentioned the anthocyanins. This is from a paper, as you can see at the top there. Anthocyanins and their metabolites as therapeutic agents for neurodegenerative diseases. Now that's Alzheimer's disease, that's Parkinson's disease, Huntington's chorea, all of these things. And I'm not going to go through details. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different ones there on that slide. But six different mechanisms that have been shown that anthocyanins, these purple colours, will activate or suppress those mechanisms, somewhere in the body at least, to improve the function of that part of the body. All of those mechanisms exist in the brain, so all of the background is in the brain that would be affected by those. We don't have the evidence that they have in the human brain. It's actually really hard to get that particular evidence, but we don't have the evidence that that particular mechanism is active in that disease state and can be changed. But we know that those mechanisms are there, and we know that they are changed in other situations. Inflammation is a major one. The breakdown, apoptosis is mentioned on there, the controlled breakdown of cells, renewal of cells, and by oxidative stress, a number of things are mentioned there. First of all, we need some evidence that in humans, these things actually happen. We've done some studies, you see there it's called blood pressure in hypertensive overweight patients. We had a small group of patients which we gave a small bottle of the Queen Garnet plum juice and asked them to take it every day for 12 weeks. And they were measured every 2 weeks, their blood pressure, their inflammatory markers, all sorts of things were measured. And the slide there shows two graphs there. The top one is systolic blood pressure, the bottom one is diastolic blood pressure. So these were mildly hypertensive, 140 over 92 roughly, as their blood pressure. So that's not high enough for the doctor to say you must go on medication now immediately, but it's looking at hey, we need to measure again in a couple of months' time to see whether you do need to go on it. So at that stage where an intervention may be able to prevent going on to medication, which, although much improved, there are still possible side effects. The red one was a raspberry cordial. So this was what we told the patients was that we are testing 2 different fruit juices. Now, calling raspberry cordial a fruit juice, I think it's called stretching the English language, but we did, and it was easy. And as you can see there, the red one, after 12 weeks, was completely unchanged. There is no decrease in blood pressure with raspberry cordial, not surprising. But look what happened with the dark colour, it's actually purple. The Queen Garnet plum juice has a small bottle, and as in the top there, small bottle for breakfast every morning. Decreased blood pressure over time. So the blood pressure, the systolic blood pressure is about 128 at the end of 12 weeks. This is remarkably close to normal. So it's a plum. Not a white powder from a multinational company. It's a plum, and that's all it is. Simply juicing the plum, nothing more. Has significantly decreased blood pressure, better than almost any drug on the market in that group of patients. So as good as or better than any of the antihypertensive drugs on the market. My background is as a pharmacist. The diastolic has come down as well. So not only has that blood pressure come down, it means that their need to go on to medication has gone. There is no need. This is a functional food. Provides nutrition and decreases or attenuates whatever a disease state. Next one. We have in this country some of the most remarkable native fruits in the world, and there's a whole range of them on that side there. And I'm not going to go through them, but there's a whole range. We know virtually nothing about how they work, if they work, how to grow them, any of these things. And some of those, I see some of these pictures and I look and think, oh, I've never seen that one before. Remarkable. One of those is Davidson's plum. And it's unusual, on the other picture on there, it's unusual. The fruit grows on the trunk. There, it's a purple colour. We've done the testing in animal studies. We haven't done the testing in humans, but it's got the same active ingredients as the Queen Gunner plum, so it's got anthocyanins as well. But this is just one of so many native fruits that we know virtually nothing about. But when we've looked at Davidson's plum, now the key ones are the last two columns on these ones. The last two columns, the first one are fat rats. So rats have been given a diet high in fructose, high in saturated fat, and they got fat. Who would have guessed? And their blood pressure went up, they've got fatty liver, they've got the start of diabetes, they've got osteoarthritis. So all of these things that are consistent with obesity in humans have occurred in these diet-induced rats. And if we look at the heart, so this is what's on C on there, so the third one across at the top, there are lots of inflammatory cells in the heart. So there's inflammation occurring in the heart. The next one, the last one there, D, is after treatment, so same diet hasn't changed, but they've been given the Davidson's plum in their diet. Virtually no inflammatory cells left. It's a fruit. That's all it is. In the next one, that red colour is a staining for collagen. And around the blood vessel, so the one under C there, G, there's extra collagen around the blood vessels, and so it means that the vessels can't expand very well to let blood through, the muscle can't expand properly, the heart muscle. You can see the next one, it's basically all gone. Same diet. And then down the bottom, the cells in the fat pads become much bigger. Probably have to see it very close to see it properly. But the cells in the fat pads, the adipocytes become much greater in size. After treatment, they've shrunk. So that decrease in the obesity is because the cells become much smaller. The material is thrown out and used in the rest of the body. So this is evidence that there is an improvement in those key issues, the inflammation, the collagen deposition, which follows inflammation, and the size of those adipocytes, the lipid cells, with Davidson's plum. Would Davidson's plum also have effects in the brain? We don't know.